Daniel Roberts,
And I'm Roger Price.
and you're listening to Artifacts from Highline, where we'll be bringing you stories about some of the artifacts and exhibits we have at the Highland Heritage Museum.
And some of the artifacts we have in the collections room also that are of interest to maybe different people. So that's we're going to try and introduce some new topics to the museum.
So thank you for tuning in. I hope you find some of these interesting stories and enjoy.
Good afternoon. I'm Roger Price, and I'm at the Highline Heritage Museum, and I'm here with Daniel this afternoon, and we're in the radio booth, and we're going to talk about the earthwork of was
Robert Morris.
Robert Morris. It's done. It was over on around 216th South, and it kind of overlooks the Kent Valley there. But yeah, I've been by it several times. It's kind of interesting. But Daniel, he has uh, a little more uh, knowledge on what this was all about back when it was made.
Yeah. So it was a earthwork that was created in 1979 by Robert Morris, who was a important figure in minimalism and the international earthworks movement. It came from the original plan or the project came from the King County Symposium with the title "Earthworks: Land Reclamation as a Sculpture," and it had the goal of taking a damaged industrial land that could be rehabilitated through art. The project would do this by bringing together artists and government agencies to discuss large-scale sculptures that use earth as its medium to rehabilitate natural areas damaged by the industry. Uh, Morris was part of phase one of this project that the Earthworks was also a part of, while there was also a phase two that had six other artists that would restore damaged sites, but we're primarily talking about Morse on this one. For him, his location was known as Johnson Pit number 30, and it was a old granite like mining area.
Mm.
The Art Commission's Visual Materials Committee had determined that the one to do the work should be someone international or that was known internationally. And so they invited 22 artists, with 11 responding and Morris being the one they selected. Uh, and it, yeah, like I had said, that site was a gravel pit. So it was a gravel pit called Johnson Pit 30, and it was one of over 100 gravel pits in the County area that had operated. With this one in particular had been known for degrading from erosion, dumping, and neglect. The site had been sold originally by John Winston to County for $500 in 1907.
Mm. Oh, wow.
And it had been known to be a nice hillside setting. However, it was also known as a dumping site for abandoned household goods and vehicles. So, yeah, you can kind of see why they might not be too concerned with the hillside and might just be like, all right, let's turn it into a gravel pit. And then just how it continued to have issues.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But Morris would transform the 3.7-ish acre pit into an earthwork sculpture. There were no public funds that were used in the original construction. Instead, it was money that was donated by the Department of Public Works and Art Commission staff, who raised money as needed, such as covering the artist fees and expenses through a variety of grants and money that they already had on hand. The King County Architecture Division also helped minimize the construction costs by providing professional construction management services. So that probably made it a little bit cheaper than if you found some private contractor.
Uh-huh. Sure.
The gravel pit itself was turned into a series of descending terraces and concentric earth forms planted with ryegrass. The intent of this was to refer to ancient terracing methods used in agriculture, amphitheaters, and formal gardens. The site originally had what Morris called a ghost forest, which were charred tree stumps, and those were supposed to evoke memories of like the forest that used to be there before the industrial excavation. Later on, though, trails, benches, and pathways were added to help visitors experience the work, and also apparently helped reduce erosion. Uh, it it did have to deal with a considerable amount of preservation, though, in the 1980s and early 90s. There was urban development around the SeaTac and Kent area that threatened it, as well as, ironically enough, more like industrial parks, warehouses, vandalism, and of course, illegal dumping that damaged earthwork. So it was to the point that at one point they'd kind of considered demolition, but that was met with protest from artists and preservationists. So instead, they managed to generate enough funds. I believe it was around $50,000. And what they did with that was create design enhancements from a study group that was trying to find the best way for the site's restoration. And they even had Morris visiting and approving of the enhancements, even though was no longer, or didn't live in the area. These enhancements started in 1995, and then in 2003, King County's public arts collection and art programs was transferred over to the Cultural Development Authority of King County, which is also known as something as for culture, which is something I actually recognize that part, not its full name. Finally, though, it gained recognition from the National Register of Historic Places, being labeled as Untitled Earthwork in 2021. Not the most imaginative name, but
Uh-huh. Yeah, well.
just something a little more to add was about the artist himself. Morris was born in Kansas City, Missouri in 1931, where he received his education in engineering at the University of Kansas. And then he studied art at Kansas City Art Institute and the California School of Fine Arts in San Francisco. He also studied philosophy at Reed College in Oregon and served in the Army Corps of Engineers. In 1959, he moved to New York City and he received his master's degree in art history from Hunter College in 1960. Yeah, and then like in 1963, that's when he finished it. He also explored painting, dance, and choreography, which apparently helped influence his sculpture work. And his primary interest was in land art, not surprising.
Mhm.
And it was rooted in perception, the carousel, and phenological and art form making and symbology. Some words I haven't read too
Yeah.
often, but he had numerous major exhibitions, which included the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York City in 1970, the Art Institute of Chicago in 1980, the Corsown Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. in 1990, and a retrospective at Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum in New York in 1994. So the guy actually, was pretty important. He also moved around quite a lot.
Yes, he sure did. Sounds like it. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. I was going to add that if anybody was uh, wanted to see this, I would go the for directions. I would go down to Des Moines, or you could go over the Military Road, but take 216th and out of Des Moines and go up the hill and cross over the I-5, and then you go over to Military Road, uh, and then you go straight across Military to 35th Avenue South. And once you get on 35th Avenue South, you can follow that down the hillside and it turns into 37th place south. But then it'll kind of wind down the hill, and then you'll go you'll drive right by it, so you can't miss it. It's just about at 40th and uh, just off. It's a little ways off of military, but maybe a mile or so too. But yeah, it's pretty interesting if anybody's interested. And then from there it kind of winds down the hill and comes down to I believe somewhere in the area of Rilla Road down in Kent. So that's how I would try to find it.
For sure. So, it's a interesting little bit of history and it's a little bit different. So, hopefully, you might have found this interesting. Hopefully, you might decide to spend a couple hours or an hour of just swinging by and seeing it yourself. But regardless, I hope you enjoyed some of this and I hope you'll join us next time.